get started. Just so you know, we are recording this session. We will be posting it on the website at a later date if all of the narrative goes well. So with that, I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Ellen Mailing. I'm a contracted program manager for this new domestic trade initiative. As context for this upcoming opportunity, I did want to share a few remarks. Paul Johnson from GPCOG is also co-presenting with me. We're going to go through a lot of information about the program and then end with some opportunities for questions and answers from all of you. Those will not be recorded, however. So basically, this opportunity is developed through the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. And you can see me, I'm working on a number of initiatives related to the domestic trade program. So I did want to share a little bit of information about the Office of Business Development. I work within this department. We have a really fantastic business answers hotline that's available through email or a toll-free number. So if you have, issues with your small business, have some questions about just what you need to get operating, potentially some issues within the state government, Business Answers is there to help you. So please keep that in mind as a resource. We also have a really great website called Select Maine Sites, and that contains demographic information about the communities and a lot of other resources available to you. And lastly, DECD does have some business incentive programs. So if you're interested in that's available, Business Answers is your best first stop for all of that. So next, I wanted to talk a little bit in general terms about the domestic trade pilot program. This was really actually a strategy that was outlined in the governor's 10-year economic development plan, and then had some opportunity to get funded through the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. So this is really intended, again, to build Maine businesses' capacity to reach domestic markets, both within Maine and outside the state. We have a number of different components under this program. One that may be of interest to many of you is this opportunity for free market data. We have a form on our website. Paul will show you that later in the webinar, but these are great opportunities to learn a little bit more about your industry and have some context for your growth plans. We also have other funding opportunities available. I'll just mention that the Maine International Trade Center, MITSE, has a domestic trade expansion program with seafood, food and beverage, renewable energy, and defense businesses, and also Maine Technology Institute through the Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corps is also providing support for professional consulting services. So there is still funding available through those programs, and I would encourage you, if you have a small project or a smaller project that you would want to embark on, that having a conversation with MITSE and MTI's MERC program would be another avenue of funding that could be available to you. They cannot be the same projects as the domestic trade initiatives. I'll also just mention that Maine Made and the Maine Apex Accelerator programs have already obligated funding. But here we are talking about the domestic trade grants. And I wanted to mention that as we were working through the opportunities that were available to distribute this funding, we knew we would need some help. And we submitted, put out an RFP, and the Greater Portland Council of Governments responded to that. So these I'll turn it over to Paul shortly, but just one thing to say, on behalf of DECD, I hope you will take your time to craft a competitive application. The deadline, all the applications will be reviewed after the deadline of April 11th. But already we've seen some really incredible results from organizations that have received funding through the program. They're getting national exposure. They're able to grow their workforce. They have lots of increased capacity for sales. So I'm really excited about what we'll be seeing in this next round of funding. So with that, I will turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Ellen. As Ellen mentioned, my name is Paul Johnson. I work for the Greater Portland Council of Governments, and my role for you is to help you put together a successful application that meets all of the criteria necessary for it to be passed on to the evaluators, and hopefully for you to have a positive result. So this next portion of the slide is me going over the specific program for the domestic trade grant application process. After I go over the slide, I'll actually go live on the website as well, just to navigate in real time. So you have a real-time experience on how to navigate the website. Before I start with the slides, I'm just going to drop into chat here for everybody. There's just a quick list of quick links for you. If you you can copy and paste these links, or you can click on them. I believe they're hyperlinked. It starts with the governor's press release about this second round of domestic trade, and it goes on to essentially all the links that you need as an applicant, or you might need to access as an applicant. So with that, let's talk about the timeline. The application opened a couple weeks ago, and it closes, more importantly, it closes on Thursday, April 11th at 5 p.m. So that is your drop dead application date to submit your application. To be clear, that the submitting an application early has no advantage over submitting an application on, let's say, April 11th. Of course, I wouldn't recommend to the last minute for technical issues or what have you, but I do think it's necessary to be aware when you're budgeting your time and when you're looking at the steps that you need to take. There's no advantage of submitting early. So when error on the side of following the guidelines, doing the research on the program, and doing your best in submitting something that will check all the boxes, so to speak. If everything works perfectly, then we are hoping to issue our checks on mid-June. Of course, as you can imagine, there's lots of moving parts. So mid-June is an optimistic deadline. I think we can meet it, but just know that, like any other program with lots of moving parts, things can happen between now and mid-June. One of the threshold questions, or the number one threshold question for you as an applicant, is, do you fit in one of these 10 industries? I will say that the website that's now linked in the chat and that I will go to live has this infographic right at the top of the website. So if you spend time with this, or if I go through this too quickly, please understand it is readily available for you to sit down and spend some time on, hey, am I in one of these 10 industries? You'll notice the 10 industries have some sub-industries listed for you to help you understand, do I qualify for the grant? If you have any questions about your eligibility with your industry, you can email our help email address, which I will give you very soon. And it's actually in the chat. I believe it's in the chat at domestictrade@gpcog.org. When you email that email address, you're just getting me on the other end. So I'm pretty adept at answering these threshold questions. So if you look at this and you're still questioning whether you qualify, shoot me an email directly and I can answer. I usually can turn around answers pretty quickly for you. Moving on from the industries, on the left side of your screen are the type of industries that are eligible. So if we say, okay, I'm in the right industry, then the question is, am I an eligible entity? My guess is most of you in here are eligible. You'll notice that there's lots of things covered in the eligibility. So any business, an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, a sole proprietor, those are all able to apply for this grant. And we also accept applications from 501c3s, 501c6s, and tribal businesses. So there's opportunity for private businesses to apply. There's also opportunity for nonprofits and for associations to apply as well. On the right side of your screen, you'll see essentially the maximum amount of money you can ask for. Before we talk about the maximums, the minimum amount you can ask for is $10,000. And I believe Ellen mentioned this, but there are those couple other programs. And so I encourage you, if you have a smaller project, one of those other programs might fit really nicely with your project. So those first few slides that Ellen teed off this presentation for are important. This is a great resource, but it should also be a gateway for you to understand there's a lot more resources out there for you. So if you have a smaller project, I would encourage you just to check out those other resources. But moving on, according to your number of full-time employees, this is the chart shows the maximum amount of money you can ask for. One thing to note here, is full-time employees actually is considered full-time employees equivalent as well. So there are cases where independent contractors would count towards your FTE amount. So if you have a 1099 independent contractor that you utilize, there are times where those would qualify towards your FTE or your full-time employee number. There is a step-by-step process outlined in the guidelines to help you calculate how many FTEs you have. So I would strongly encourage you, if you do have some questions on what size your business is, it's ultimately your decision on how you will apply. So I would encourage you to spend some time with those guidelines and the checklist, because it walks you through pretty clearly how to calculate your number of FTEs. Down at the very bottom of that chart on the right-hand screen, you'll see something called a collaborative initiative. A collaborative initiative is made for one lead applicant that might partner up with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other organizations to apply on behalf of a group that might have a common goal or a common project they want to take on. So perhaps that you're let's say you're in the forestry industry and you want to develop a campaign that raises awareness and increases the sales of every forest industry company in up north, or in let's say Presque Isle or what have you. You can do that as a group. It's just an option for you. Those are limited to 100,000. And it's important to realize that if you are part of a collaborative initiative, you can't submit a separate application that would be for the same use. So you want to be cautious. If you're going to do a collaborative initiative, it needs to make sense for you as an individual or a private business, because you can't submit 2 applications that are having the same project, so to speak. Moving on, these are your 4 allowable activities. So just like the industry infographic that was in the beginning of the presentation, I encourage you after this presentation to spend time with these 4 allowable activities. These are written, these are in the guidelines just as is as well. Spend some time to really understand what is allowable and what isn't. A common thread with all 4 of these is you'll notice that these are activities to increase your top line, so to speak. This is the domestic trade grant program, which means we're trying to increase your sales, whether it be in the outside Maine or any of the other states in the United States. But it needs to be more of a marketing or a top line initiative. So you'll notice there's no infrastructure or equipment associated with the allowable activities. So I would caution you against thinking about, oh, we could use a new storage shed or something that is more structural. That is not allowed. So you want to make sure you spend time with these 4 allowable activities and appreciate them for what they are, because there's not a lot of these programs that allow you to have this flexibility of, hey, what do I wish I would have done, or what could I have done if I had more funding? This really is an opportunity to, quote, pitch an idea that would actually increase your sales. So treat it as such, but just be mindful of these 4 activities, because there is a pretty clear line of what's allowed and what's not. Your application will be evaluated on these 6 bullets. Of course, eligibility and completeness, though that's a gatekeeping question. Evaluators won't see your application if they don't fit number 1. And that's part of my job. So that's why you want to ask me about eligibility and completeness, because part of my job is to make sure that your application is in order. I'm not going to speak too much of your strength or your chances of approval. I'm not an evaluator. So there's lots of applications I might love and the evaluators don't love. I don't know. But what I can do is set you up for success and make sure your application would check all these boxes. Number 2 is your capacity. So this is where the actual evaluation takes place. We evaluate on the capacity to implement your activities. So when you are filling out your proposal, you want to make sure to spend some time and effort on, hey, I have this great idea, but I also need to show that my organization has the current capacity to execute that idea. Capacity is a word that is used intentionally. Capacity can come in a couple different forms, and I encourage you to play off the strength of your organization. Your capacity could be your working capital. Your capacity could be the human capital. Your capacity could be your current infrastructure or your production abilities. So capacity, as long as it fits the word capacity, use that strength to pitch your ability to complete your proposal. Number 3 is pretty straightforward, the strength and the detail of your project plan. You're going to make a proposal, you're going to submit a budget with it. Do those two documents speak to each other? Is it very clear that what you're proposing and the money you're asking for are related, right? And does it follow a coherent, easy to follow sequence of events or steps, so to speak? Number 4 is a big one. The potential to increase your domestic sales. The point of the program is to increase your domestic sales. So you want to really illustrate that, hey, this is where we are now. And if we get funding, we think we could be here. So to that point, you want to, I would caution you against funding things that you currently do every single year or staff that you currently have, right? That sounds a lot like maintaining your status quo. The point of the program is to rise up and increase your sales. So keep that in mind, because that is a criteria that you will be evaluated on. Number 5 is the location of your business or your business's supply chain and your access to previous funding. So this particular program, we've made lots of efforts to reach out to new applicants that perhaps have never applied for grants before. And I believe approximately 70%, Ellen, of the first round were new applicants.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to mention too, that there is, if you are not sure, because there has been quite a bit of funding that has gone out through the overall Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, that there is now a searchable dashboard that you can access online. So I will put that in the chat, but you can look at that and determine which businesses have already or initiatives have already received funding from the program.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's a common question. It's okay if you don't know your organization received funding from the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, use the tool. Lots of organizations have utilized different resources. So, and sometimes the origin of those you might not remember. So that tool is great to quickly look up whether your organization has received funding. And then lastly, which you can get to, I'll show you on the website, but you want to make sure that your application is in alignment with the Governor Mills 10-year economic development strategy. And again, there will be a link to that on the website I go live on, and that's in your chat. And that's a scoring criteria for the second round. So again, you want to spend some quick time familiarizing yourself with that document. Where do I fit in? Where does my organization check the box on this document? And call those out in your application. Here is a picture of the templates that are on the website. The templates are a little bit different. They don't have the logo. So we took those logos off specifically just to have more room for you visually so you can work with the templates. But really important, these templates are a requirement. They are in Word docs on the website. So when you download them, they're a Word doc. They belong to you. You should be editing the templates, and this is what you should be submitting as your application. These two pieces of paper are what you actually are evaluated on. There's an online portal that you have to fill out all the basic information, but these are the two things that the evaluators are going to look at. So it is crucially important that you just take these templates and you're going to turn around. Everybody's application is going to look the same. If you do it right, you're going to look the same. It's going to be the content of the application that's going to be judged. So just pay particular attention. That's what the templates are for. It's a requirement round 2 that you use the templates. Since I have them up, I will direct your attention to the right template, which is the budget template. I'm going to answer one of the most common questions right now. One of the most common questions we receive is there a monetary match requirement? So if you look down here on this line, can you see my cursor, Ellen? Yeah, okay. So if you look down here, there is a monetary match. That monetary match is not a requirement of the program. However, if you look up here, this is your project that you're proposing. It's possible that your project you're proposing is a little bit more money than what you could actually request from a grant. So this whole project, let's say it's $120,000. That top should equal this bottom of $120,000. And so that's your responsibility to say, hey, X amount of money is going to come from the grant request, X amount of money is going to come from in-kind, X amount of money is going to come from the monetary match. That's what's expected of you on that budget. If all of the money's coming from the grant request, that is okay, as long as it's an allowable grant request. But the monetary match is there, so your sources and your uses match. Any budget should be balanced. And then I'll say that it's clear some businesses have lots of capital and some don't, and that's okay. And if a business with lots of capital want to use a big monetary match to demonstrate some of their capacity, that's fine. But a monetary match is not a requirement. So I encourage you to spend some time with that budget template. Make sure your totals equal your totals. These two guys should be the same. And it is okay if you do not have a monetary match. Lastly, I'll end the slides on this. This is just, it's in your chat. And actually, I'm going to put it in the chat one more time. But here's how to get a hold of us. You have a couple different resources here. You have domestictrade@gpcog.org. Again, that's me on the other side. So you're just going to email me and I'll get right back to you. You have a phone number. We have a call center that has all of this information that we've trained that can answer some of the quick questions. If you have a quick question of, hey, where do I find this again? Or what's the eligibility here? You can also have a phone call. And lastly, this website down at the bottom, I'm going to go live on that website right now. We're going to talk about it. But that's where everything lives, so to speak. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick because I got to pull up the website. And Ellen, is there anything you want to add while I pull all this up?
No, again, I think, it is again worth it. All the applications will be reviewed after the deadline. So please take your time to kind of do the research that you need to do to really create an effective application. That might include having preliminary conversations with consultants if you're planning to use those, doing some more research about your market. But again, no need to rush. Please take your time to do a good application. Make sure it gets in well before the deadline, but not, take your time to do a good job.
Ellen, can you just give me the thumbs up? Do we see the good? Okay. So this is just the website. So you're seeing me going live on a website. This is your home. This is where all of this information lives. You will see that, as promised, right up top, before we get into all the clickable stuff, there's the infographic to answer your threshold question, do I qualify? And then right down here, you'll see this header that says Domestic Trade Grant Program. Notice how you'll see a lot of the same email addresses I've said, right? And all of the phone number, all of this is in one place. This is how you click to attend this webinar. This webinar happens live every Tuesday at noon. We don't record it. I mean, we record it, but we actually are doing a live presentation now. And before I go to these 6 icons right here that are super user-friendly, I'm just going to take a minute to scroll down here and just highlight once more. These are the other resources that Ellen mentioned at the top. It really probably is worth a click through the majority of the people that are on the webinar and that we deal with. Let this grant program experience perhaps be a gateway for you to understand there's more resources out there for you, and all of them are free. So it's definitely worth some time to spend some time down at the bottom of the page. Now, here is the 6 icons that are what you need to do for this grant. Number 1, guidelines and the frequently asked questions. I would encourage you, this webinar is not enough. Grant writing can be tedious, and it's really important to follow the rules. So before you get started, I recommend downloading these 2 PDFs and spend some time with both of these documents. They're not super long, and they're written in a way that are easily understandable. You won't see a whole lot of jargon. A lot of it should feel, now that you've been in this webinar, a lot of this should feel like review, so to speak, but there's more details in there, and there's more of the nitty gritty. So this is your guidelines, your frequently asked questions. Download them, spend some time on them. And then these 2 things, number 1 is create an account, and number 2 is actually the application portal. So I'm going to go to the application portal first. Some of you on here might already have an account through the DCD. If you do, that means you might have applied for a grant in the past or what have you. You click the application portal, and you're going to get a screen right here that tells you domestic trade grant, and it's going to tell you to apply online. and you're going to have this username and login screen. So if you have an account, if you've applied for a different grant through the DCD before, you might have an account. If you don't have an account, it's okay. Don't get frozen on this screen. All you got to do is create an account, and it's super easy. You can just click not a member down here. And the good news is you're only looking at a one-page application, and you can set up an account essentially instantaneously. It's right here. Once you get an account, then you can log into that portal and start your application. And I will just go back. If you choose, if you know you don't have an account, then you can simply just click this create an account as your first step, create an account. Then that will let you go into the portal. To be clear, when you go into the portal, it's relatively easy. It's just asking you the basics of your request. It's asking how you heard about this program. It's asking you your legal entity. So the portal itself is really 10% of the work. 90% of the work is the templates. So you can absolutely take some time to do these things concurrently. You can get your account set up, and you can start your application, and that will be automatically saved. And then once the templates are all nice and pretty, you can submit those later. And here are your two templates as promised. You can tell I told you they're in doc form, so you can download them. And you just click on them, and it'll just go right to the template. I recommend you download it. I think it's pulling up because I have it on my computer. And then you can edit it. Make sure to follow all these directions right here. Save it on your own computer, and then there will be a place in the application portal. There'll be a place in the application portal for you to upload those, so to speak. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. And before I go any further, Ellen, I just noticed we didn't do the checklist of the requirements. So I'm going to go backtrack and do that because I think that's important. And I don't know if I skipped it, so I apologize. So bear with me. I'm just going to pull this guy right back up. And before we take Q&A, I'm just going to do real quick. I must have pressed the arrow twice and skipped over this, but it's actually pretty good order for you as a potential applicant. As you're getting your application ready, here are your 6 things you need to be aware of. Number 1, you do need what's called a UEI number. A UEI number is not through the state, it's through the federal government. And you want to go to sam.gov. It is one of the links I put into chat, which I will put one more time into chat. If you have what's called a DUNS number, the DUNS number is no longer accepted. You need to get a UEI number. If the word DUNS number sounds familiar to you and it's the only thing you have, they're comparable, just the DUNS number is not active anymore. You need a UEI number. To be clear, when you go to the UEI screen, they're going to tell there's like a registration process that's long and lengthy. And then there's a, hey, I just need a UEI number. 99% of the people in here, you just need your UEI number. Do not go through the lengthy registration process. That's if you're contracting directly with the federal government. So to be clear, your UEI process, take the shorter of the two. Realize there's a couple hoops to jump through. You have to upload some documentation. But once you get that done, people have been turning around their UEI number in about 24 hours. But here's a great example. Like if you want to leave today with what is my checklist of things to do, I would do that. I would get that done or get it in process. That way you don't run into a headache later down the road. You need your name.
Sorry to interrupt, Paul, but I'll also mention there is no charge to receive a UEI number, and you should ignore whatever spam emails come to you in the future offering to have you pay to either maintain your record or receive the number.
And there's no way to rush a UEI number either. So if somebody's trying to charge you money, just email me and I'll take care of you. So that's the answer. I'm already getting paid to do this, so just email me, I'll do it. But you shouldn't be paying to get a UEI number. Number two is your NAICS code. A lot of you are familiar with it. This is essentially the code that directs, it's a code for your industry. And this is the way just to check what industry you're in. It's a function of the census. So you can go to the census and you're going to look up your NAICS code. To be clear, some of you know exactly what it is. Some of you fit in 2 or 3 or 4 codes. That's okay too, as long as it's an honest reflection of what your business does and industry the industry you're in. Choose whichever one that fits. So that's an easy lift. That's just you looking it up and making a decision on what code fits you. We already said you must use the templates. In order to be funded, you have to be in good standing with the state of Maine. And that's important. That means a few things. That means your taxes. That means your annual report every year. If you're required to fill out an annual report, which is due June 1st every year. That means if you're an industry that requires a state level license, so all of those administrative interactions you have with the state, think of all of them, they have to be current or you won't be able to get funding. So for some of you, it's not a lot of things. And for others of you, it's a few more things. So you know what interactions you have with the state, make sure those are all up to date. This is a grant, so it's taxable, right? This is not a loan. This is taxable income. And lastly, for the reporting, Ellen will be doing some site visits and there'll be some follow-up calls from the DECD just to make sure that you're doing essentially the proposal that you asked for. And more importantly, how successful is it, right? Is this, it's more about, let's see if this program is successful. And Ellen, do you want to add anything to the reporting requirements?
Yeah, fundamentally, I think the thought is that we will be following up with you to measure increased sales. But in the event that things aren't going well with your project, if you aren't funded, I really encourage you to keep us in the loop on how things are going with your work. So we will be sure to, in the event that you are awarded, there'll be some additional communications that are coming your way with that. But we hope that you will keep in touch with DECD and let us know how things are going.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to stop the recording. So give me 1 second.